We're on Joshua chapter 4. And the first 3 verses are, now it came about when all the nation had finished crossing the Jordan that Yahweh spoke to Joshua, saying, take for yourselves 12 men from the people, 1 man from each tribe, and command them, saying, take up for yourselves 12 stones from here out of the middle of the Jordan, from the place where the priest's feet are standing firm, and carry them over with you, and lay them down in the lodging place where you will lodge tonight. Okay, he picked 12 guys. And they're going to get some stones here, and they're going to carry these stones for a purpose. They're taking them out of the middle of the Jordan. And he wants them to carry them on the other side. And they're going to serve a purpose. Verses 4 and 5. So Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the sons of Israel, 1 man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, cross again to the ark of Yahweh your Elohim into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes of the sons of Israel. Now, it's interesting that Joshua picks out 12 guys from each tribe for a task. I just thought that was interesting. What's Joshua's real name again? Yehoshua. The same as Messiah's name, Yehoshua. It's the same name. You know, they both pick out 12 guys for a certain task. In Mark 3, starting in verse 14, we read, and he appointed 12 that they might be with him, that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to cast out the demons. And he appointed the 12 Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, and James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James, to whom he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder, and Andrew and Philip, and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. So there's several allusions to the 2 men, both named Yehoshua. Now, where's Yehoshua taking them again? Into that promised land, into that kingdom, and they're going to possess it. Verse 6, let this be a sign among you, so that when your children ask you later, saying, what do these stones mean to you? Okay, does that sound familiar to anybody? Remember at Passover? What are you get the young man, or the young man that comes up and asks these questions and does just the same thing. And what's the answer? Well, the answer is the same thing we're going to hear here. It's so important to teach our children the Torah. I mean, you raise them up in the Torah, they will always embrace it. Okay? Of course, there's always exceptions to that rule. Proverbs says, train your child up in the way that is right, and he'll not depart from it. That's been my observation. Kids embrace the Torah splendidly. A lot better than most adults. They just do. You know, kids like boundaries. They like to know the boundaries. Kids, while we're gone, you can do whatever you want, but not that, that, and that. Okay? No, that, and that. Okay, thanks. When I was, my brother and I were both teenagers, my parents went on a 2-week trip to Jamaica. And my dad said, do not do anything that gets back to me. You understood? I understand that, Dad. And nothing got back to him. Didn't get arrested. Didn't have to call him in Jamaica, ask for help. Kids love boundaries. They like to know what they are. It's necessary. We read in Deuteronomy 6, verse 20, when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what do the testimonies and statutes and judgments mean which Yahweh our Elohim commanded you? Then you shall say to your son, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and Yahweh brought us from Egypt with a mighty hand. Moreover, Yahweh showed great and distressing signs and wonders before our eyes against Egypt, Pharaoh, and all his household. And he brought us out from there in order to bring us in, to bring us the land which he had sworn to us, to our fathers. So Yahweh commanded us to observe all these statutes, to fear Yahweh our Elohim for our good always, and for our survival as it is today. And it will be righteousness for us if we're careful to observe all this commandment before Yahweh our Elohim, just as he commanded us. So when your son asks you, time to come, saying, what do the testimonies and statutes and judgments mean, which Yahweh our Elohim is commanded you? That's our righteousness, son. That's what that means. That's our righteousness. Okay? That's doing the right thing. That's what all these things are. If we're careful to observe all this commandment before Yahweh our Elohim, just as he commanded us. Joshua 4, verse 7. Remember, it's about those 12 stones when your son asks, why are those stones there? Verse 7, then you shall say to them, because the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of Yahweh. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall become a memorial to the sons of Israel forever. Thus the sons of Israel did, as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, just as Yahweh spoke to Joshua, according to the number of tribes of the sons of Israel. And they carried them over with them to the lodging place and put them down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan at the place where the feet of the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant were standing, and they're there to this day. Now, if you'll recall, when the two spies went into Jericho, what did Rahab tell them? She said, we heard about you guys. Your Elohim is scary. We heard he even parted the Red Sea for you to get through and then caused it to close back up and kill the Egyptians. Well, now, and they said, well, yeah, that's true. That's what happened. She said, we've never heard of such a thing. We are scared to death. Well, Elohim is going to give them good reason to be scared. It took several million of these people crossing. They went first with the Ark of the Covenant, and the waters parted in a huge swath in the middle, starting early in the day. Then the several million people crossed, right so Jericho can see it. Okay? Just so they could see it. You heard the rumor. It was true. Well, I'll prove it to you. There you go. That number 12, the 12 stones. The number 12 in Scripture, if it's used in a symbolic fashion, or even not, it needs to be looked at this way. It represents Israel. That's what it stands for. Not all numbers in Scripture mean something. Okay, I've seen lists that people make of number 1 stands for God, number 2 stands for, 3, the Trinity, whatever. Okay, you got 7 stands for completeness, all right, symbolic fashion. 12, Israel. Other than that, you don't have a whole lot, symbolically, in the symbolic meaning. These 12 stones, it represents the 12 tribes. Always think Israel when you see 12 in Scripture. In Exodus 24, verse 4, and Moses wrote down all the words of Yahweh. Then he arose early in the morning, built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's not an uncommon thing. Then in 28, verse 21 of Exodus, and the stones shall be according to the names of the sons of Israel, 12 according to their names. That shall be like the engravings of a seal, each according to his name, for the 12 tribes. And keep in mind, we look at the 12 that Yehoshua, that Messiah picked, and they also are, why did he get 12? You ever wonder that? Why did he get 12? Because they were all, either Jews or Benjaminites. They weren't, we didn't get one from Dan, didn't get one from Naphtali, and because a lot of them weren't around to be found. Because the 12 disciples, 12 apostles represent Israel, all of Israel. That's why he got 12. Look at Luke 22. Verse 14 says, and when the hour had come, he reclined at the table, and the apostles with him. Then skipping down to verse 29, just as my Father had granted me a kingdom, I grant you, that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and you will sit on the thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. See, they represent the 12 tribes of Israel. That's why there was 12 of them. They are going to be judging them. And this is also told us in Revelation. In Revelation 21, starting at verse 9, and one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and spoke with me, saying, "Come here, I'll show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from Elohim. Now, this is such a misunderstood, all of Revelation is misunderstood. This is not difficult to understand at all. First of all, he says, come here, I'm going to show you the bride. Who is the bride of Elohim? Israel. It's Israel. Okay, it's throughout Scripture, it's Israel. The term for church, it says the church is wrong. Well, that term is the Greek word is ecclesia. It just means an assembly of all or part of Israel. That's all that means. Okay, it doesn't mean a new separate Gentile entity that's now going to start singing songs and collecting money. That's not what it means. He says, okay, see that coming up? That's the bride. He's telling you what this is. That's the bride. That's Israel. New Jerusalem. And it's described in such a outstanding, it's the splendor is outstanding. What you're looking at is a poetic description. All of Revelation is symbolic, okay? It's a symbolic description of redeemed Israel. All right? That's what it is. It's not a picture of what heaven's going to be or anything like that. No, it's a picture of redeemed Israel and how Elohim sees his redeemed people. It says, having the glory of Elohim. Her brilliance was like a very costly stone, as a stone of crystal clear jasper. And it had a great and high wall with 12 gates. Here's that 12. And at the gates 12 angels, and names were written on them, which are those of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, 3 gates on the west. When Israel camped in the wilderness, how'd they set up camp? Same way. You have a tabernacle in the middle. You'd have three tribes in the north, 3 tribes on the west, 3 on the east, 3 on the south. It's a picture of Israel. And the wall of the city had 12 foundation stones, and on them were the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Well, there we go. We're tying the apostles again right into these 12 tribes, and that's what it's doing. It's a picture of completeness. If you look at the whole thing, and you got to look at the original language, sometimes they take the dimensions and they don't use the same numbers. Okay, for instance, it says that the wall is 144 cubits thick. Okay, but my New American Standard says 72 yards because a cubit's about a half a yard. No, stick with the 144. What's the square root of 144? 12. That's 12 squared. The walls are 1,500 miles, it says in the New American Standard, long and wide. No, it's not what it says in the Greek. It says 12,000 furlongs. Okay, 12,000 furlongs. A furlong's an eighth of a mile. It's all picturing Israel. It's 12. How many gates are there? 12. How many foundation stones are there? 12. And on those foundation stones are the names of the 12 apostles. And it says there's going to be one road. It says a road, okay, made of gold, a street of gold. Doesn't say streets of gold. Does not say streets. It says street of gold. And it's straight. What is that? That's the path you walk. That's the Torah. That's what it's talking about. Go through, it says, your Torah is worth more to me than all silver and gold pieces. In Proverbs and the Psalms. You see, it says there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. That doesn't mean this one's going to be thrown away and we're going to pull Mars down here, make it a little bigger, and give it water. That's not what it means. What it means is there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth, and there's going to be new rules. It's going to be governed by the Torah, which is going to come out of Jerusalem. That's the new heavens and new earth. There's still going to be people. Just going to be different. Boy, I chased that rabbit all over the place. Go back to Joshua. Verses 10 and 11. Told you I needed my notes. For the priests who carried the ark were standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything was completed that Yahweh had commanded Joshua to speak to the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. And the people hurried and crossed. And it came about when all the people had finished crossing that the ark of Yahweh and the priests crossed before the people. Okay, so they're standing in the middle of Jordan until they got everything done. You got the stones out, people crossed. The last thing that's going to come out is the ark. And the sons of Reuben, the sons of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh crossed over in battle array before the sons of Israel, just as Moses had spoke to them. And about 40,000, equipped for war, crossed for battle before Yahweh to the desert plains of Jericho. Now, that's 2.5 tribes that are staying on the one side. Okay? They're staying over there, but they've got to help battle the enemy. Got a promise to do that. And they did. So they sent, it's really less than half of their men. They left some behind to help take care of the cattle, protect the women and children. It really wasn't it wasn't a great setup. They should have been obedient. They should have crossed over when they were told to, but Elohim worked with them on that. Verse 14, on that day Yahweh exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, so that they revered him, just as they revered Moses all the days of his life. Okay, so this is the new Moses. Joshua is taking the place of Moses. That word for revere, I looked it up in the Hebrew. It's usually translated as feared. Yeah, they feared him. Okay, if that's the one Elohim speaking through, yeah, revere, fear, I'd say fear. That fits. You know, and he's in authority now. He is in authority. The one in authority that Elohim appoints, we have to revere them to a degree, because no leader comes without Elohim appointing them. Read in Romans 13, starting at verse 1, let every person be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there's no authority except from Elohim, and those which exist are established by Elohim. Therefore he who resists authority has opposed the ordinance of Elohim, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. Well, he also goes on. Bad place to stop here. Because should the Nazis have followed Hitler? Should the German people have followed Hitler? Well, no. And those that did, to the utmost degree, were executed after the war, and rightfully so. He goes on to say, it's those governing authorities that do good. Verse 3, for rulers do not cause a fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you'll have praise from the same. For it is a minister of Elohim to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it's a minister of Elohim, an avenger who brings wrath upon the one who practices evil. Wherefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. See, there's a conscience issue here too. He specifically said that these governments that punish evil and reward good, that's who we are to revere. Verse 15 of Joshua 4. Now Yahweh said to Joshua, command the priests who carry the ark of the testimony that they come up from the Jordan. So Joshua commanded the priests, saying, come up from the Jordan. And it came about when the priests who carried the ark of the covenant of Yahweh had come up from the middle of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up to the dry ground, that the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and went over all its banks as before. This is springtime. This is the 10th day of the first month. Okay, that would have been spring. We're looking at March, April. Lots of rainy season. The bank was huge. The waters were huge. That's what Elohim held back. Verse 19, now the people came up from the Jordan on the 10th of the first month and camped at Gilgal on the eastern edge of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they had taken up from the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal. And he said to the sons of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, what are these stones? Then you shall inform your children, saying, Israel crossed this Jordan on dry ground. And I read commentaries that say, as far apart as a big swath, and it says it's from by this town to by this town, that water was cut off. Some people say it could have been an avalanche. Not dry ground. They crossed on dry ground. Saying there was not completely supernatural doesn't work. Okay, and it says the waters walled up on both sides. Not that they had an avalanche that did it. And then just as soon as they got across, the waters came back again. Verses 23 and 24. For Yahweh your Elohim dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you had crossed. Just as Yahweh your Elohim had done to the Red Sea, which he dried up before us until we had crossed. That all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of Yahweh is mighty, so that you may fear Yahweh your Elohim forever. He did this especially for the people in the land that they're going into, so they could see. He's going to totally demoralize them. They won't have the heart to fight Israel. They could have easily defeated all the enemies, just like they were commanded to, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it. What did they do instead? They tried to live in that land with them people. Okay? That's what they tried to do. Then we go on after Joshua, we go into the book of Judges, and we see all this turmoil. There's fighting, there's killing, there's paganism that Israel's involved in, all because they didn't drive those people out, all because they didn't annihilate them like they were told to.